My name's Anthony Russell. I'm a retired lecturer from Anglia Ruskin University, and during my working life I worked on a variety of projects ranging from Denmark down to Burma, including work with DKIT in Dundalk in Ireland, and that work included providing modules for higher education programs in the Karen refugee camp in Nupo on the Myanmar-Thai border. I'm walking in the footsteps of Michael Coleman. Michael Coleman and 99 other small tenants from, I think it's Corona, Townland in Roscommon were assisted immigrants from the Mahon estate. Michael was of indeterminate age. He went through Liverpool across to Quebec, and the last record of Michael is in New Orleans in 1851 in a hospital there, along with 22 other people from Roscommon. We assume that he probably died at that stage. However, from my own point of view, when he was in Liverpool he probably ran across people called the Coolies, and the Coolies were immigrants from the Cooley Peninsula in Carlingford, near Carlingford, and they had been emigrating from the Cooley Peninsula to New Brunswick in Canada, St. John, since I think 1834, and that was related to the fishing industry. So it was chain migration. So that chain migration was established before the famine, but then obviously it accelerated during the famine. It was so well established that there is still an area in St. John, New Brunswick called the Coolies, and the people from there are identified with the Cooley Peninsula. Well, again, the Mahon immigrants were slightly different in that they were assisted immigration, and as we saw from the reenactments, they were very harshly treated as they moved from Strokestown to Liverpool and then on. When they got to Canada, as I'm sure other speakers have said, they would have faced the typhoid sheds, and up to half of them died. Some did get into families, and some prospered when they got there. And as we saw, their relatives are back with us. However, the impact of the famine was social and geographical, and from my Northern Irish point of view, probably not ethnic. It was the 1 million labourers and cottiers who bore the brunt of the famine. It was they who died or who emigrated, along with the small tenant farmers. What is emerging from research is that there are actually groups who did quite well out of the famine. For example, you had the shipping agents, you had ship owners. There was a man running ships, 6 ships, out of Newry, County Down, or Warren Point, County Down, and he would send the ships over with emigrants, and they would come back with timber, because he had a timber business. And if you look at his monument, Francis Carver's monument in the Roman Catholic churchyard in Newry, it is a huge monument, and it indicates wealth. Allied to that trade, then, you would have had boarding house owners and shopkeepers who, almost in collusion with the ship's captains, would have delayed the people in the ports. So the longer time that they spent there, then the more money they spent in the boarding houses and shops and so on. So this idea that it was all down to the landlords and they're the only ones who really had any responsibility for what happened during the famine. I think as our research develops, we're seeing the culpability and the shame of it, looking back, is probably much wider and deeper than we ever imagined. The other, from my own research point of view, the thing that I find very interesting is that in Loch Hall, for example, where the Orange Order was founded, there are descriptions from the Quakers which are every bit as awful as the Times reports from Skibbereen, or the reports from John Mitchell, for example. It was John Mitchell who said that the God sent the blight, but it was the British who sent the famine. And there's an element of truth in that, because when we look at, for example, China during Mao's time, it was obviously his political ideology which drove that particular famine, and an element of course, also in North Korea. Likewise in Africa, it was the neo-colonial governments, the governments after the independence, that really were responsible in many ways for the famines that have broken out across Africa since independence. So I think there's an element of truth to what Mitchell said, in that it tends to be economic factors rather than ecological factors which produce famine. Well, I think one thing that we know is that Ireland is a much more prosperous place, paradoxically and ironically, because of the famine. Our population isn't nearly what it was, and those who are left behind are more prosperous than they probably would have been if we hadn't had the famine. And I think that's part of the guilt that the survivors of the famine experience. What lessons we have for today? I think I go back to John Mitchell, and I think that looking at the world today, just as our famine really was mostly a social famine, an economic famine, then I think also most of the famines in the modern world are probably of that cause as well.